It looks like Nick's launchpad is working today for once. Hey, Ross, Mark, how you guys doing?
How's it going, guys?
Hey
Oh, I have
guys.
zero complaints. I cannot think of a more awesome way to spend a Friday while working. So I'm looking outside and it looks nice and warm. My wife just
Yeah,
pulled
you're
into the
stuck
garage.
inside.
Nope, someone's pulling around in my garage. I should tax them on that. So anyway, Mark, Ross, first, can you explain what Security Lake is? But before that, can you explain who you are, what you do, and why did you want to spend your Friday with us today?
Sure, I'll go first. Hi folks, Mark Terranzoni. I'm the GM of Security Lake, as well as Amazon Detective, really focusing on helping customers address their security issues before they become bigger problems.
And I'm Ross Warren. I'm the product SA on the Security Lake team. I've been working for Mark for the past 10, 11 years in different
Sorry for that.
avenues. And actually, when I first met Kyle, he said, I know who you are. You downloaded one of my white papers years ago. So it was a little bit of a weird coincidence when I first met him at a bar after he joined AWS.
I don't go to bars.
No, he never dragged me to
Never.
a bar.
No, that's why this beard is so full. It's full of secrets. I don't know. I'm riffing with it. I'm seeing what sticks. All right. Cut me some slack.
Comedy is a numbers game, isn't it, Kyle?
It really is.
Yeah. Well, Ross and Mark, thank you for joining us. We're here to talk about Security Lake, and it's been a year. So take us back in time a little bit. What was it like launching a year ago?
Stressful, but exciting, as it always is. But let me talk a little bit about what Security Lake is and what the value prop and what's happened over the course of the year. So ultimately, at the highest level, we want to democratize security data. Customers can't protect what they can't see, and many of the things they want to see are hitting in lots of logs in large volumes, and it's really hard for them to parse that information and bring it to the surface. So we help them do that. And the journey started really by talking to customers that were spending a lot of their security analyst times basically data wrangling. And what they found out is the security analysts are really good at analyzing the information, but not really good at pulling it all together. And it was a large set of undifferentiated heavy lifting. So we wanted to really take that off the table and automatically centralize and organize all the data that they need in one place. And that place is in their S3 bucket. So they have control over that data, and they can vend it out to whatever partners, including some of our cool tools, to make use of that data and helpfully try to figure out what's happening in their environment that may involve some risky behavior. That's it at the high level. When I get a little deeper into that, we have this notion of sources and subscribers. So sources are things that we generate in AWS on workloads that we bring in automatically. Subscribers, and those sources include multiple third parties, SaaS application, logs from on-prem, logs from other places that customers run workloads. So they have a unified, centralized view. And then the subscribers are largely analytic workloads, including things that we have, such as OpenSearch and Athena and SageMaker, and third-party tools like Splunk and Datadog and IBM CrowdStrike and IBM QRadar and CrowdStrike and Palo Alto Networks that the customers already use today, but want to have a bigger aperture onto the information that they can analyze over time. So that's kind of what it looks like. And over the course of the year, we've added a lot more sources, we've added a lot more partners, and we've added a lot of interesting integrations. And the reason this comes together pretty natively is, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the, we cannot talk security without some Gen AI and some of the capabilities that brings to the table. And Ross is going to give us a nice demo on that a little bit later.
Hopefully.
But why this is, why Security Lake makes that a lot easier for customers is twofold. One is the query stack is understood and unified, right? SQL queries, we have a language, we know how to write queries in that language. And then what we did with industry's help is we created a schema on this data called Open Cybersecurity Schema Framework, or OCSF, that now takes the data that's coming in and unifies it into a format. So when you have a known set of data and you have a known set of capabilities that you want to query it, things like Gen AI can automate that process. So what we found in our journeys with customers is they are really smart from a security perspective, and they know how to ask really good questions, like things like, tell me the top 5 vulnerabilities in my environment. They're accessible to the internet.
Speaking of really good questions, Barry, let me interrupt you here for just a second. We had a really good question from chat. You know, I think before we dive fully into, I'm sitting with 3 security experts. I'm a little nervous, actually. You all are going to start. Okay, 2 security experts. Sorry, I miscounted. You know, we're some of the audience, maybe they don't have a security background. I'm a dev. Right. So when I think logs, that's where I go to troubleshoot. Right. But security folks, y'all live in the logs. I've learned logs are your lifeblood. Right. Can you explain kind of the fundamentals? Right. The question from chat is, what do I have to have a basic knowledge of to get into security? Like, but can you explain maybe like why logs are so important to security posture at a company?
I'm just going to start calling myself a digital lumberjack because I deal with logs.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kyle. You're going to say something.
Yeah. So there's awesome ways to learn more about Security Lake, but also just the basics of AWS security. And there's a handful of ways of doing this. One, you could join these live streams. There's also a live stream called Lockdown, where we focus on security stuff. That's on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific time.
Who does Lockdown, Kyle?
As your host, Kyle, where we talk about various security topics, but also for like immersive experiences. There's workshops.aws, and I'll ask politely that Nick drop the link into the chat for you to reference. But those are some like self-paced workshops. But then there's also AWS Skill Builder, a more formal training where you could look at the learning paths of getting your AWS Solution Architect Associate, your AWS Cloud Fundamentals or Foundations. It's one of the two, or the Security Specialty Certification. So there's multiple ways to go about it, depending on what your preferred modality of learning is. Now, if you want to learn more about Security Lake, if you're at any of the conferences or if there's an AWS Summit, there's typically hands-on workshops that are happening around that as well. But yeah, there's tons of resources, and we'll try to get those links into the chat. And maybe during our sponsor segment, I'll pull up some links and drop them in the chat myself.
So Kyle's very verbose and he wants to make sure he's got everything out there. But to get into Security Lake, it is actually very, very easy for you to start enabling logs and bringing things in. That whole normalization that Mark talked about, if it's an AWS log, you don't have to think about it. You now have logs normalized across your whole organization, where before even I had to go Google, how do I do cross-account buckets? What are my policies? What are my roles? I've got 4 or 5 buttons to start doing that in Security Lake. So it's very, very easy. It's now then what do you do with the data is sort of now what those partners or those other kinds of solutions that Mark was talking about.
And that's the open source standardized format that you were.
Yeah,
just
the normalization is
OCSI.
Yeah,
interrupted you so rudely, Mark.
That's a component of it, but I think Ross hit the nail on the head. Getting it all in one place, and customers get to decide if they want to bring it into one region or keep it in the region it's generated. But these logs can be large, right? They emulate all of the traffic patterns that the customers run while they're running their applications at AWS. They're capturing all of the API calls and in the interactions within the resources at the infrastructure layer. So there's a lot of data that's in here. And what the beauty of that normalization and some of the capabilities that Gen AI brings is we can start to bring that data back in a pinpointed way. So we're not bringing it all back. We're not spending a lot of money on processing it all. It's at rest. And when the customer asks a question through one of the partners or our tools, we're just precisely going to the information we need and giving the results back. And that saves a lot of time and a lot of money.
Well, we're running out of time. Ross, do you want to show us some of this work?
Ross said he had like pop-up pictures and like a
you took it right on. I was like, that's a great question that someone just asked, because now let's go show how we can do all that.
Yes.
And very, very easily. What we're looking at here is a pretty nice looking dashboard in QuickSight. And one of my colleagues built it, and I've watched him write SQL queries. It's not fun to watch him write SQL queries inside of Q or inside of Athena, but he built all this very, very easy by asking questions of Q. So what we're kind of looking at here is QuickSight that's got some data sets that are in Security Lake, all that normalized format, everything that Mark was just talking about. So we've got a bunch of cool visualizations here, right? We've got a nice landslide coming off there in some of our data, and I've got other things here. We could look at CloudTrail, we could look at Security Hub, and we've got a lot of really nice detail. But let's figure out, how did Matt actually build these things? I can now start. I clicked on, hey, let's ask some questions of my CloudTrail data. Q is pretty cool because it actually will give me some questions that it already thought about. And we could pick, we're randomly going to go, let's see if this one works. Fingers crossed. All right, great. That was easy. Did I write a SQL query, Kyle? No, I know you love writing SQL queries. But now I know that I've got a lot of read activities, 1.3 million read activities. What's cool is I can share this visual, and I can then start building other, adding to that dashboard that I showed you a minute ago. That's kind of on the left-hand side of the screen there. I think someone said about, let's put something else in there. What resources most high-level vulnerabilities? Now, fingers crossed again. Do I get some good data? What I'm doing now is really just, hey, I'm starting to investigate my data. Okay, we've got a whole bunch of resources, and my visualization didn't necessarily give me what I wanted, but that's fine. We can now,
because we didn't do a dance for the demo.
Oh, we didn't do a dance. You're correct.
Nope.
But that's one way to start building up some of these visuals. But I want to kind of show you guys a little bit of the back end, just a little bit. Remember I said that Q could actually generate some questions. I've got a whole bunch here that I did not type in. Looks like a whole bunch of people have been testing them and asking them, but you can click on them and once again, randomly chosen. That pretty good. I now have an account. I can go, if I want to start doing a deeper investigation, I could actually just pivot and look more at this account if I wanted to. I can do it right here.
What I think is also important to highlight here, and because you mentioned logs, logs, right? This is almost eliminating the barrier of usage to getting or being able to ask a question to your data and get a response. Because normally an executive, an analyst, someone, they need to be familiar with the query language, whatever the flavor of whatever they're using for their data analytics or ingestion is, right? It could be proprietary, it could be ANSI SQL. Who can remember all of that stuff?
Yeah.
Right. And so
I've got
accelerating that.
Except I didn't have to write SQL. I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to, even understand that it's a vendor versus an account versus an AWS, user. Wow.
Yeah.
A little bit of trip up there.
It's Friday.
What's even really more cool, can anything be more cool than Kyle? No.
Very few things.
So that's just visualizations. That's really nice into QuickSight. But what if Mark came to me and said, Ross, I need a weekly report of what our security status looks like, and I need it in 10 minutes. Hopefully you knew that you had to do that report before.
So it's always like, hey, you busy? I need a report right now.
Right.
Immediately.
He knows I've asked that before.
No, never.
This isn't a real example, right, Ross?
Yeah.
You made this up.
And so just to tie it all together, I actually asked Claude to say, I need to create a dashboard. Give me a story.
Now, real quick,
about
Claude
Yeah.
is a foundational model that is Gen AI stuff. It's not a person. Ross didn't track someone down and say, hey, Claude, can you make this? Claude is a
Claude's
foundational model. Yeah.
So I asked Claude to give me actually a QuickSight story to be able to build something. And so I pasted in here. I'm not going to read it. As the SOC manager, I need to provide a weekly report and it kind of gave me, I need security incidents, threat intelligence, compliance status, right? I didn't edit this. I really just cut and paste this out of my friend Claude 3. And I can go now. Remember, I was building up those dashboards that I had before, or those visuals. I can now utilize some of these, and they may not be the proper ones, but we're going to throw a whole bunch of them in there, and we'll take a look what's going on. This is completely random, and this one looks nice.
I found that when working with like chatbots or anything that's AI related, talk to it like a three-nager. Like, when I've found that I'm talking to chatbots and like Gen AI in a very similar manner that I talk to my 3-year-old, very specific, more detailed instruction gets you the more detailed responses and narrows the scope of the data that can be returned. And plus the retrieval augmented generation. I mean, we could go on and on about Gen AI workloads, but what you're essentially saying is, hey, the security manager that just walked by as I was about to head into lunch said, I need a report with this information, this information, this information, and that information. By the way, I need it sparkly, charts and lines and stuff.
And I only failed because I didn't start over. I didn't follow the exact instructions. So what this is now doing, I said, I want these visuals, and I have that story that I need to build. And we should, and very easily now, have a PowerPoint presentation, and Kyle will say ooh and ah when we get there.
Now, story.
We don't have the rights to that, Kyle. Don't sing too much.
It always comes up with funky names too. Some of the other tests I've been doing. But as it generates, maybe I picked way too many visuals.
Yeah. Well, while this is generating, let's talk about where this all consolidated. We started with Mark telling us about Security Lake's way to consolidate all of these disparate logs coming from all the systems into one place, and that's how you even get to the point where you start building visualization. So we kind of launched across Security Lake into the getting value from Security Lake portion, but we wouldn't even be able to be generating these visuals without Security Lake behind it, where you've stored all of your security logs from all the different tools you're using. And now, Ross, you're generating these visuals that you're going to share with your executives to give them insights into what's been going on.
See, it's even generating a summary for you too.
I know it even gives me a summary. It didn't populate some of them just because I was randomly picking, but I
mean, for you to just
so nice, I can actually bring these in,
select everything, and you're doing this in like the matter of 10 minutes is still really cool.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I would edit it some. I know what Mark wants usually, and so I would edit it a little bit. But yeah, I'm using data.
He didn't have to know queries. He didn't have to. He just asked like normal questions, and that data, it represented these reports. It's awesome.
I know for a fact, with my familiarity of QuickSight and querying Security Lake, this would take me at least half hour to an hour at a minimum to even pick what theme I wanted to use for the conversation.
Modern.
And then, I know for a fact this would save so much time for those that need to generate reports for like security weekly reviews, or this is really awesome.
Yeah.
Or investigate or threat hunt or do any of these cool things that the security folks do on a daily basis.
Yeah. Well, hey, you know what? Unfortunately, we're out of time, but chat, if you want me to try to convince Mark and Ross to maybe do a deeper dive that might be like 30 minutes to 45 minutes long, let me know. Let me know in the chat. I'll see if I could drag them along on the lockdown, and we'll talk more about how we could create visualizations using Q and QuickSight. We do have one question. Does it become better over time at generating reports? That I don't know, but we'll find an answer and probably talk about it on lockdown.
Yeah.
So more coming. There's a lot more work about what I just did. There's a whole team building some more stuff. And so, yeah, I think.
Yeah. Where Ross is the face, there's a big team behind him creating a lot of cool stuff, which is really
But I have a big face already. So wait a minute.
I didn't say creating a big face.
That's why it's a big team.
Oh my gosh. Someone get Mark and Ross out of here. I'm kidding. Mark, Ross, thank you so much for joining us. I'm really excited to hear more about Security Lake and the success it's had. And also, it's been around for a little over a year now,
I've heard.
which is really
Congrats.
cool.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Rumor has it.
right.
Absolutely.
Take
Thank you.
care.
Yep.
See you next time.